You're listening to Wise Women with Daisy Khan, where faith rolls up its sleeves as a force for good and where women define the future with wisdom and wonder. I'm Daisy Khan, author, speaker, and a Muslim woman who spent her life wrestling with the messy, miraculous collision of faith and real life. And kindly subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Welcome to Wise Women with Daisy Khan. And today we're venturing into a whole new terrain, pushing past these usual boundaries of the AI talk we hear about. And whether you're a seasoned technophile or just a curious, AI curious person like me, I want you to buckle up because we're going to have a conversation with my guest, Waleed Kadous, who is a Muslim father, software engineer, Australian, and Quora writer and 3D printing newbie. Is that true?
Yeah, I'm a bit more than a newbie these days, but yeah.
Wonderful, great. Okay, so I really want to welcome you to this. So I just want to ask you, what drew you into this world of AI? Did it start with you being an engineer?
Yeah, so I was, as you mentioned, born and raised in Australia. And as I finished my undergraduate studies, it's really what I looked at next. And so I really felt that at the time AI was very interesting. I had this idea that AI could help humanity in various ways. So I had worked on using AI to recognize sign language and using AI to classify ECGs. Funnily enough, when I did my PhD, and I finished that in 2000, the joke was that I was told that there were no practical applications for AI. And yet here we are 25 years later. Sometimes these things take a little while to incubate. So so I got into it with the intention of helping. I've had the chance to affect the code that runs on millions of phones, or billions these days, when I was on the Android team. But always the theme has been, how can we use these advanced capabilities of AI to help make people's lives better, to improve? So born and raised in Australia, went to university, did my undergraduate degree, and at that point I had a choice about what to work on next. My career plan was to become an academic. That fell through the ground. But at the time, I was really interested in how could we use this artificial intelligence technology to help people. My keystone project for my undergraduate degree was how we can use gloves to understand sign language. And this is back in the early, mid-90s, very early in the technology. But from then, I saw the power of AI to help people in a practical way and have worked on it since. And in various capacities, initially with recognizing ECGs and then using robots to rescue people, and then using it in Android to help people identify their physical activities, but all through the theme has been, how can we use AI to help people? The funny thing is, AI has gone through a huge transition in those 25 years. It's just incredible. The joke at the time when I did my PhD was there were no commercial applications for AI. So why would you choose to study it? And now we've seen that it's turned into a world-changing technology. So It's funny the way things turn.
Yeah. So since you said world-changing, right now it's the biggest buzzword on the planet, right?
Yeah.
And I would like you to demystify it for somebody who's never even used a chat bot like, ChatGPT. And how would you actually define AI for the ordinary person who doesn't know anything?
So historically, what happens is computers are very good at following instructions. You tell them to do A, then B, then C. If you place an order on Amazon, there's a certain sequence of steps that need to happen to do everything from show you the photos of the object to closing the final transaction, right? But what artificial intelligence is about is, can we build systems that adapt and learn from their experiences instead of being told to do a fixed sequence of instructions? And so the first iteration of AI was about, how can we use data to make predictions and recommendations? Is this person likely to buy or not? If this person watched this sequence of movies, will they like this other movie, right? So those are prediction and application tasks. But the key thing is it's learning. As people do more and more, it's watching. And then came the revolution that's happened now is what's called generative AI. They've gone beyond prediction and recommendation, which, has already been world-changing enough, but gone into this incredible world of being able to generate things, generate answers to questions, generate beautiful images, generate short videos, transcribe audio. All of a sudden, their capabilities have kind of burst into the scene in a very general and flexible way. Historically, AI used to be very brittle, so minor changes would cause big issues. But the real big change in the last 2 years is its general capability, its generative capability to make new things.
Yeah. Okay. So then I want to go back to the system itself, right? I mean, you're saying that it continues to learn, right? So
Mm-hmm.
exactly who trained it and where does it get its data and intelligence from? Because if it's
Yeah,
artificial intelligence, it's drawing this intelligence from somewhere.
absolutely. So there's two things, two very important things to recognize. Number one is that it's basically a massive synthesis machine that takes all of humanity's wisdom and just converts it into numbers, basically. And so you'll hear people talking about this model has, 100 billion parameters, right? Everything of humanity. So it takes a huge set of data. Think about everything ever published, every book ever written, and they use these to train these models. But the second thing to realize is how many little choices happen along the way that are actually human, and how those little choices can unintentionally or intentionally introduce bias into these systems, right?
Um,
So maybe you choose a particular set of books, but not others. Maybe you choose particular languages. Maybe after, these systems go through a pre-training stage where they kind of build the model, and then there's a post-training stage where they have humans review it. And many people don't know this, but there are thousands of people employed in Kenya that are spending a lot of natural intelligence to make it successful, right?
I
And so
see.
what are the policies that you do there? How do you moderate content?
Mm,
And, all of these knobs are very tweakable. And so I think people have this idea that this process of creating an AI is somehow absolute or objective, and
mm.
it's not. It's just as human as any other product.
So
It,
that's
it,
what you're saying. That's what you mean by it can be retrained because you can enter some additional data
yeah.
into it and or different perspective into it. So actually, I'll just share my own example. It took me 4 years to write my book on Muslim women's rights. And then I met a friend of mine at the end. I was about to publish it, and I was telling her how long it took me. And she worked at Microsoft. And she said to me, well, if you had worked on ChatGPT, this would have taken you this much time. And so at that point, I'd heard the name ChatGPT. And so when it first came out, I said, let me just try and test ChatGPT to see what kind of research they have. So I typed in was Aisha, the Prophet's wife, 6 or 9 years old. And then it immediately spit out, well, she was 6 and 9 years old, and they gave me all these hadith and all this other stuff. So I got really upset because I had in my book determined that she was anywhere from 16 to 18. And I said, no, she was not. Hell no. And my friend had told me you can retrain it. So I actually took the research from my book and I put it in there. And I said, well, have you considered this is another perspective? And
Yeah,
then today, if you ask that same question, my information is there.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Is that what you mean?
yeah, that's a good example of it. I remember in the early days when this AI came first out, I asked one of the early chatbots, what does Islam say about killing non-Muslims?
Mm.
And it just produced a statement that was like, Muslims are obligated to kill non-Muslims at every opportunity. And it's just like, really, guys, come on. So this
Yeah.
is why it's so important to get things like the training data correct, the algorithms
Mm.
correct, right? And why it's important to some extent that Muslims build their own systems that do this. One of my projects is something called Ansari.chat, which is
Mm.
an Islamic AI assistant that, when you ask challenging questions, adopts an Islamic worldview and brings in Islamic sources. Um,
Ah.
and so it results in very different answers at times.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's not that these systems are intelligent, it's just that they've aggregated human intelligence. Number two, that it's a human process. And
Mm.
literally humans are involved in every stage, and anything that's human
Mm.
will be flawed and will reflect the biases of the people to put it together.
You didn't answer that first question that I asked you. And is there a company that started this or companies?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, AI is an old field. Many people don't realize this, but it's been going for since the 1950s. It's actually close to 75 years old. But
Wow.
the most recent revolution, the generative AI revolution, started in about 2017 when a company called Google released a paper called Attention is All You Need. And
Mm.
that led to a cascade effect that, 5 years later or so, OpenAI released ChatGPT.
Mm.
Um, and ChatGPT was the first thing that people saw that was like, my goodness, this is going to change the world.
Mm.
So it's been a cascade now, and after that, it's kind of been this very tight competition between companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Microsoft. All of them are kind of
Yeah, competing.
vying for
Yeah.
control. And then the other thing that's happened is the Chinese have entered, and
Yeah.
that's happened more in the last year and a half, right?
Hmm.
And they are showing extremely good results, competitive with the United States in many cases,
Yeah.
but with its own set of biases.
Yeah.
There's also a tension between what's called open and closed models, right? Models, there's a community that believes these AIs should be accessible to all, shouldn't be limited and held in kind of a closet. Whereas there's the more commercial interests that are, keeping all of the goodies in-house and not
Yeah.
sharing them with the public.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the cat is already out of the box, right? As they
Yeah.
say. Yeah.
Yes.
What are the differences now? If we could just go through the differences, the very basic, which is the AI, which we use today, the chatbots.
Hmm.
And then there's something called artificial general intelligence. And
Hmm.
then there's something called super intelligence. And then there's
Hmm.
something called agent AI. What is all this? Is there like
Okay.
pecking order to all this?
So first thing to realize is that uh, we don't have artificial general intelligence yet or artificial superintelligence. We're kind of at the point now where the intelligence is useful enough to be applicable to certain, especially digital tasks, not physical tasks. Um, but the stages are that we're kind of in the pre-AGI stage, and there's all these discussions that are happening. Are the technologies that we are developing enough going to be capable enough to produce a true artificial general intelligence, which is intelligence on par with human intelligence? These things right now are kind of simple, and they're also locked into the digital world. There's a big leap from the digital world to the physical world where we have robots and you can apply AI to robotics. Artificial superintelligence is the idea that at some point the AI will be even more intelligent than humans, and that will kind of result in some kind of social revolution or an idea called the singularity, that the AI just becomes all-knowing and will be able to control everything and will be responsible for advancements beyond those of humans and or possibly destroy humanity in the process. I find those fears are a little overstated in my view, because you really do realize their limitations. And the fact that as of yet, we don't really have physical digital robots that move around really limit their ability to have that kind of impact. And I'm much more worried about what humans will do with AI than what AI will do itself.
Yeah.
We've shown more than a propensity to destroy ourselves without AI even being on the scene. And it's really about how we use the AI.
Well,
The
I'm so glad that you're saying this because, Waleed, I've been reading up on this stuff.
Yeah,
And some of the people who are the biggest alarmists are the people that were actually involved in building
mm,
these systems, right? I guess
yeah.
they're seeing the potential of it, and maybe this is why they're hoping that somebody will intervene. So you're saying that maybe we don't have to worry about it so much.
I would say that sometimes the people who are making the case for why we have to be worried for AI have their own agendas, right? So one of these people that has to be talking about this, ironically, is the head of OpenAI, a guy called Sam Altman. And
Mm,
he says, oh, we need all of this regulation to make sure that AI doesn't do harmful things. Well,
mm,
that's an old Silicon Valley game where what you
right.
do is you try to build a moat around your business so other people can't enter. And
Yeah.
they will be able to meet those regulations, but new entrants won't. So effectively, Altman has an agenda here, which is to create a barrier to entry for competitors.
Mm,
Um, and to prevent, and this was actually a very serious issue, we talked earlier about open models, and
mm,
to prevent competition from open models. Now, it's a very dynamic scene, but you really have to be careful in this space about what everybody's goals and intentions are. We can't
yeah.
assume that they're sincere.
Yeah.
And if you actually survey the researchers, and this was conducted recently, they're not so confident that applied superintelligence is just around the corner.
Yeah.
And this is more of a media thing, or
Mm,
people who are adjacent to AI
mm,
who kind of see this thing, but practitioners in the field are a lot less worried about it. And
yeah.
I'm talking about people here like Andrew Ng, who's like one of the gurus of the space.
Yeah. So I was going to actually ask you this question a little bit later about Sam Altman, but since you raised his name, what do you think his goal is? I sort of wonder why even a handful of individuals are allowed to experiment on 8 billion people's lives
Mm,
if they have their own agendas and we don't really know this industry.
mm. Well, uh, I think his goal is world change, with him profiting along the way, I think. Um, but I think there's also a technological optimism about people like him that don't fully acknowledge or embrace the social change that's to come with this. And one of my concerns is what you might call technological inevitability,
Yeah.
which is if something can be built, it will
Mm,
be built. If it's not by Sam Altman, it'll be done by the Chinese or
yeah.
someone else with a vested interest.
Exactly.
So So there's kind of an inevitability that this technology will come into existence.
Yeah,
And so his argument would be, well, then the best thing to do would be to be at the forefront of that.
yeah,
Um, and to make as much profit as I can. But
yeah,
it's very hard. One of the things as Muslims is we can't really know people's intentions. All I can say is that this is my best guess.
yeah. Well, leads me to that famous saying, if you're saying this is inevitable, that people may not take an interest in AI, but AI will certainly take an interest in them.
Mm,
So what does that look like in practice for an average person?
mm,
For instance, in the past, we could just turn off our TV with our remote or even shut down our computer or whatever.
mm,
But,
mm,
we certainly can't shut down the internet. Is that similar to the internet? Like you can't
mm.
just turn off AI?
Well, the first thing to realize is that you're already um, the TV shows that you watch are being chosen. Whether you get a loan or not is controlled by AI, basically. Whether a particular financial transaction was fraudulent is controlled by AI. It's already, what particular tweets you get to see versus, your neighbor who has slightly different political views gets to see. AI is already kind of in our business all the time.
Mm.
And I keep thinking back to the hadith that mentions about usury, that, even if you try to avoid it, the dust of it will get to you. Even if you don't engage with the technology very much,
Mm.
it's still going to be there. Now, there have been some legislative approaches, especially coming from the Europeans, with legislation called GDPR,
Mm.
uh, the General Data Privacy Regulations. And
Mhm.
that seems to have given you certain rights to control what happens with your data.
Mm.
Um, but at other ends, like you're an author, I know that you like to write books. You don't really have a lot of control whether your book ends up being used to train this AI or not. So it's not, and in fact, just this weekend, last week, there was a settlement between Anthropic and authors for like $1.5 billion.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was wondering why am I not there? I have this very personal fear, right?
yeah,
Because I write books and then I
yeah,
sort of wonder, are they just plagiarizing my information without
yeah.
consequence?
So,
And we have all these copyright rules when it comes to the print.
yeah.
And I mean, if I have to borrow something from somebody else's book, I have to get permission from that author or their
Mm,
publisher.
mm,
So what does it all mean for me, like this human creativity and
mm.
identity as creators? Like what's going to happen to us?
That's a really good question. So first of all, they would argue is that their use of that text that you've written, they won't plagiarize it, they won't copy it outright, but that it constitutes fair use. It constitutes an acceptable use that
Yeah.
bypasses copyright legislation, right? So that's what their argument is. What I would say to you as an author is that AI will give you a new choice. And the new choice is, do I produce the same amount of work at the same quality level in less time? Or
Mm.
do I choose this new power of AI to use it as a research tool to raise the bar on the quality of books and text that I can produce?
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of people going for the first one, and it's leading to a problem called AI slop, which
Yeah.
is stuff that's just hammered over the internet written by AI, right? But
Yeah.
my hope is that it will just lead to a lifting of the level of scholarship.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you have a system where instead of that taking you weeks at a library or having to find a human expert, you can get an answer to that in 15 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my hope is that will lead to a raising of the bar, because art and literature and writing has always been about pushing the limits of
Yeah.
what it is that we can do,
Yeah.
and that's the choice that you're going to have to make as an author.
Yeah.
Um,
So do you see any ethical dilemmas here? Like from your perspective, what is the biggest ethical concern that you have? I'll give you an example.
mm,
In my book, I write about the Queen of Sheba and Solomon, and you know how
yeah,
elaborate that story is. It's almost
yeah,
theatrical. And I've always loved theater, and I
yeah,
almost envision Queen of Sheba as like on Broadway, right?
yeah,
And so I took the passage from my book and I said, write me a screenplay for this. Because
mm,
I really wanted to see how it would look as a screen.
yes, yeah,
And I got like 8 pages of a screenplay that that literally laid out the whole scene.
yes,
And and I was happy. It was great for me.
yeah,
But I'm thinking, what about the playwrights? What
yeah,
about these people who do this for a living?
yeah.
And
Well,
that's where my ethical dilemma comes in. And I'm like, okay, I'm benefiting from this at the
yeah,
expense of someone else.
yeah, perhaps.
Yeah.
That's just the nature of technology. I mean, the same thing has happened already. Like what
Yeah.
happens to the secretaries that used to type on human typewriters. I mean, that's just the nature of technological innovation. It's just that it's affecting a new area that we didn't see technological innovation affect before, which is creativity.
Mm.
So maybe it will make the playwright. I mean, there will be social changes that will change what it means to be a playwright, right?
Mm.
Um, and you're absolutely right. I mean, my favorite thing to do is like I would love to take your text and say, put this in a format that is readable and understandable by a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the text that you wrote isn't just limited to the format that you put it in, but all of a sudden you can make it accessible to a 7-year-old. You could
Yeah.
say, well, actually, I want you to do a graduate course on literature and talk about the different allegorical and um, controversial aspects. So I know, I know AI will bring these social challenges. There's no doubt about it. But what
Mm.
I would like us to do is to have a balanced perspective that also acknowledges that it will give authors ways to connect with other people that they don't currently have.
I feel I'm getting more intelligent because of the information I'm getting.
Yeah,
I didn't produce it, but the idea came from me, and now
yeah.
somebody's helping me take it to the next level.
That's absolutely how I'd like to see it. And one of the things I've talked about is human AI co-development. And
Mm.
when I was working at Canva, that was my goal. That the
Mm.
human and then everywhere else I've worked, it's basically been that same pattern.
Mm.
There's this world, maybe it's a little bit idealistic and so on, where humans and machines work together to amplify each other's ideas instead of humans. My hope was that
Ah,
humans plus AI equals awesome, not AI replace human, right?
right.
Um, and I may be a little bit optimistic, but I think, one of the things that Islam teaches us is the importance of having an optimistic perspective and to drive towards that optimistic
Mm.
outcome. And so that's at least what I've tried to do in my own work. And it's
Yeah.
where I hope things go.
And the co-stewardship, working together in tandem, right?
Yeah,
If doctors could work with AI
yeah,
instead of replacing doctors entirely,
yeah,
that's the ideal.
yeah. And that's certainly with the way I use AI personally, I do that. So, when I give a talk, I was looking for an allegory that might work. And actually, the AI came up with a really interesting allegory. So I think that's what excites me about AI.
It's sort of
That
like working with a master, right? Or like a
it,
guru or somebody like a high,
I would say it's
right?
the opposite. It's like the opposite. It's like working with a student. And
Ah,
sometimes students ask good questions,
mm,
right? Or sometimes students force a teacher to think about it.
mm,
So it's not like working with a master or a guru. And again, we have to remember the weaknesses of the system and that, there's problems like bias and hallucination where they just make up stuff and sycophancy where they try to tell you what you want to hear, right? So these systems, like, please, please, please never treat AI as a master.
okay.
Treat it as I've heard people describe it as treat it as an intern, treat it
Mm.
as the worst employee at your company, just double check everything it has to do. But that's the current state of AI. It's not going to take over the world. It's a bumbling idiot who just happens to have a very, very good memory.
I'm so
Yes.
glad that we reversed that. So let's talk about jobs. If the human brain is the biological computer, as we know, the best biological computer created by
Yeah.
God, and
Yeah.
AI is man-made and it's a digital one, which skills are going to be under immediate threat? Who are the most vulnerable? I know we've heard about programmers and
Yeah.
mathematicians.
I think what's going to happen is it will go field by field depending on which fields AI works best for. So I
Mm,
think that, already seriously affected is marketing. And things like visual design, they're basically disappearing, right? Because
mm,
and then software development, where I work and where my day-to-day business is,
yeah.
we're just seeing big companies lay off thousands of people because AI is allowing them to do the same work more productively. And people that I know that are very experienced who happen to be looking for a job right now are really struggling.
Mm,
So what will happen is this will cascade industry through industry. I think one of the next industries to be hit will be
mm,
legal. And then after legal will be medical. And then after medical will be movie making. And so it'll just kind of see, and it'll be kind of this propagating wave that just spreads as AI becomes more and more capable.
yeah.
Um, I think one of the challenges, especially in Western society, is we are defined by our jobs. And our jobs aren't just our jobs. Our jobs are, in the absence and what's happened with the loss of religion and spirituality generally
Mm,
is that people look to the material for fulfillment that they should be looking to the spiritual for.
yeah.
And so I think that's going to lead to like even more of the trends we've been seeing recently with depression and anxiety and like people just spending times in virtual worlds and talking to
Yeah.
these AIs.
Okay.
So what we'll see is, that humanity and the way I think about it is that AI will amplify the existing cracks in society and make it much worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it will amplify whatever the characteristics of the society are. If in Western society we have change in the distribution of wealth towards the higher end of town, it's just going to make it worse.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm fascinated by the societal ripple effects of anything because that's the kind of, I've always been in the world business of social change. So if, like you said, many people don't have a coping mechanism or spiritual coping mechanism. So if job automation reduces the need for human labor, right? If
Mm.
more and more people are fired and there are less people who can do the job that 100 people used to do, and there's no need for human labor, could that fundamentally alter world population? In other words, will people choose to have
Yeah.
children because they're like, what are my children going to do in
Mm.
this world?
That's I do see this as a temporary phenomenon, but there's another way to look at AI, which is to see that it's going to introduce a huge amount of wealth into society, right? And some estimates are by 2030, it will be contributing $20 trillion to the world economy, right? That
How?
in that
How is it going to generate the money?
through new things that could be built because it's more productive, right? It'll take less money and less resources to do the same amount of things that humanity needs to survive and exist, right?
I see. I see.
So the question is, who will get that wealth and how will we use it? You could use the what I call the AI surplus to fund a universal basic income. I mean,
Mm.
$20 trillion divided by 9 billion is still like $2,000 per person on every man, woman, and child. I mean, I'm asking the question, like, how much would it take to end world poverty? The problem is that society is not set up to do that the way it
Mm.
is right now.
Yeah.
And this is a time when I just had this wish that, AI had come at a time when Islam was in the prime because I could be more confident that the distributional issues and things like just the zakat, I mean, even the zakat on $20 trillion is $500 billion, right?
Yeah.
Would accrue and be distributed in the right way. Um, but yes, I think we're facing like a very, very tricky time and it
Yeah.
will be disruptive. My hope is that eventually humanity will kind of find its way through this.
Mm. Mm.
And but it's going to be a challenging period for the next decade or two. And
Yeah.
again, not really just because of the AI, but just because of the ripple effects of
Mm.
AI.
Yeah. Yep. And just not knowing how, because, we each of us can control our own lives, right? I
Yeah,
mean, to the extent that we can, but this feels like it's out of our control altogether. And,
yeah, it
and
is. It is. If you go back to what I said earlier about technological inevitability, I don't think it's really in anybody's control. And because again, let's say that we introduce really great, systems in the West. We can't do anything at all in the case of China.
right,
I mean, short of, very, very radical things that would be extremely destabilizing globally,
right.
our rules are useless. So there is kind of an inevitability to it. And what we as Muslims, what I feel we should be doing is embracing this technology. Unfortunately, I think us as Muslims sometimes, when a new technology like AI comes about, our initial reaction is to condemn, and
Yeah.
then we spend 20 years debating it about like whether it's halal or haram, and then eventually we embrace it
Yeah.
and become like it's second nature to us. Think about social media or television or
Yeah.
internet, right? So one of my goals, to be direct about it, is to shortcut that 20 years where I just say, look, this is happening. Your kids are already using AI. I can guarantee it. Your teachers are using AI. I can guarantee it. Get with the program. Let's avoid the debate and let's just move to the stage where we look at ways to use AI in a more productive way. Because
Well,
this train is moving. I mean,
this train is moving. It's on the fast track. It's not. It's not. It's moving at a bullet speed. So, as a diehard spiritualist, and I'm glad
mm,
we got to this question because this is usually my favorite part of
mm,
any discussion.
mm,
Most of our spiritual traditions teach us about knowing ourselves.
mm,
This AI, can it help us with our inner journey and
mm,
or would it lead us to like a deeper wisdom or pull us away from it?
mm. It can do both, but I want to make the case for why it can help us. My particular project is something called Ansari, which again is this Islamic assistant.
Mm,
And so it's like ChatGPT, except it has an Islamic worldview, essentially.
mm,
And so I called it Ansari because it's the idea of a helper or a
yeah,
reminder.
yeah.
So I'll tell I'll tell a story that maybe is a little bit horrifying in some ways. Um, but there was a time, like I was working on Ansari maybe 6 months ago, and my kid just woke up. I have a 3-year old now in the middle of the night, and it just took me like 3 hours to put him back to sleep, right?
Mm,
And so, to my surprise, and maybe you can say it was just like that, I was very tired at the time. I opened up Ansari and said, "Will Allah recognize the pain that I've been through of like losing 3 hours of sleep just putting this kid to sleep?"
mm,
And it quoted me the hadith and everything else that talk about, the trouble that Muslims go through. And then I realized, on the one part, this was slightly crazy, right? Because I'm now essentially coming to AI for consolation. On the other hand, I was thinking of the Quranic verse that talks about reminding because reminding benefits people. And so
mm,
the way you can think of this AI is that it just reminded me I mean, of course I knew those verses as well, but it just reminded me of stuff that I already knew.
mm,
And so there was just this moment of, uh, I can see why this can bring value.
yeah.
On the other hand, it's going to, if we think about religion and spirituality on one side, and hedonism and people fulfilling their desires and materialism on the other side, it can have just as much adverse impact by making those material and hedonistic things even more beautiful than they are today.
Mm.
Imagine if you're looking for a girlfriend, a virtual girlfriend that meets your every needs. It's going to be completely customized around you, right? Um, and so the potential is there for it to actually act in a not anti-spiritual way as well.
Yeah.
AI is the ultimate dual use technology, is how I would think about it.
Mm.
It can amplify whatever you want it to amplify.
All right. So let's then flip to the positive because you've just given me some hope. I'm an activist and I'm desperate to see some tools for good. Where are you seeing the most promising application from AI for tackling like climate change or inequality or access to education?
Yeah, I think access to education is something I'm very passionate about because again, we talk about this idea of customization. We've touched on it like three
Mm.
different ways, the good and the
Right.
bad. There's a lot of research that indicates that having a one-on-one tutor
Right.
has huge benefits for students, but it's obviously cost prohibitive. How close can AI get? And I'm thinking here about Sal Khan, the guy,
Mm.
Sal,
Salman Khan. Yeah. Yeah.
Salman
Sal
Khan,
Khan. Yeah. Khan Academy.
and Khan Academy. He's produced something called Khan Migo,
Mm.
which again is this customized tools. And now you have the big AI manufacturers introducing something called guided learning, where they
Mm.
don't just give you the answer, they try to explain and get you to think and get. So I think education is going to be one of those areas. And
Mm.
what we've seen with AI is it raises the bottom. So, when it gets deployed, it helps the people who are most disadvantaged the most to catch up
Mm.
with the people who are more advanced.
Mm.
Um, I think there are huge implications for climate change and scientific development. Um, and that's one of the beauties of AI is that it's really helping us to reconsider this question and pushing the limits of
Mm.
observability there. And then
Mm.
just again, there's this idea that it will bring new wealth into the world
Mm.
that we have at our disposal and opens up the door for things like a universal basic income. Um,
Mm.
that's on the positive side. I wouldn't say I'm optimistic that that's what's going to happen, but there's that potential. And, part of our responsibilities and advocates, people like yourself,
Mm.
is to drive towards that outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can see that because, right now I'm doing work in Afghanistan and there's no way for me to access the country anymore because people like us are not allowed to come and do, person to person teaching.
Mhm.
But guess what? We're doing it all online. And guess what? I'm going to be using AI tools to create animated books that I would have. There's no way I can send a physical book there. So that's what I'll be doing.
Yeah, and you might not speak Pashtun or Afghan or whatever
Yeah,
language.
it'll translate it for me and I'll send it on.
Yeah,
And
exactly. And
yeah.
so definitely from an educational, multilingual research point of view, I think that's, one of the big wins. And again, I do have hopes that it will amplify human creativity,
Yeah.
and just expand what humans can do.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I'm most excited about.
Yeah. So on a lighter note, I'm excited about
Mm.
all this world-changing disruption. I like disruption, but What's the personal AI or a humanoid robot that you're most excited about? I'll tell you what I'm excited about and what I'm looking forward to a machine that can chop my onions without making me cry.
Hmm.
Do you
That's
have?
a good one. I think so. I have young children, right?
Yeah,
Um, I want to build a robot that goes around the house and picks up the toys and Lego pieces and then puts them where they're supposed to
exactly.
go, so that I don't hear it crunch in the middle of the night, or that I don't end up with shards of plastic in my foot.
Right.
That's really my hope. But
Yeah.
again, one of the funny things is embodiment is really hard. Like I've worked in robotics, I've built robots. People underestimate the jump between the digital world and the physical world.
Mm.
And that's going to be a long time jump. And maybe one example of that is just how long it's taken. I remember driving in an autonomous vehicle in 2012 when I was at Google X. I was next door to the people building that. And it's only now, like 15 years later, that
Mm.
autonomous vehicles are sort of slowly but surely coming into society.
Mm.
So robotics will take a while. And
Yeah.
that's also one reason that I'm a little less worried about this idea of like Terminator scenarios, because I
Yeah.
know how hard robotics is and how often people have underestimated how complex robots that move through our physical world will be to build.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so we talked about some of the best case scenarios, worst case scenarios, but 5 to 10 years into the future, what are you predicting will happen? I mean, the things that we might have to worry about the most, but also some of the conversations we might be having as humans.
That's a really good question. Um, I think what we might see is, again, we're going to see disruptions as, the productivity implications of AI cascade through society. That might lead to certain amplification of existing problems that already exist with drug use and so on. Um,
Mm.
I think there's also a risk, but I'm hoping that people are starting to see that risk now, of cognitive laziness. Like if AI can answer all your questions, you kind of become a little cognitively lazy.
Right.
I think also, again, just the temptation that will come from AI being used for materialistic or hedonistic purposes.
Mm.
And then finally, I think it's going to lead to, especially because of Western society, and I think of the United States in particular, how central work is to identity. It's going to lead to kind of a identity crisis, essentially, for many people as they go, well, if AI can do my job, what am I here for?
Yeah.
And
What's the purpose of my life? What am I
yeah,
supposed to do?
and what am I supposed to do now, right? And this is where Islam is such a gift to us, right? Because Islam answers that question for you in such a fundamental way that you don't care if you. I'm like, if someone told me I didn't have to work, it'd be like, excellent, I can spend all my time doing something else that benefits the world.
Exactly.
But if you're defined by your work, this is going to be like a shockwave to you, that your
Yeah.
job and your entire meaning and what you devoted your entire educational career to will be replaced by a machine. That's gonna lead to a very unstable society and
Yeah.
small. It's really these societal ripple effects that could be handled well or could be handled poorly. But the world that we're living in makes me think it's more going to be handled poorly. That makes me worried.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so final question for you. If you had a magic wand, or if you were literally like in the shoes of or in the place of Sam Altman, where you
Mm.
were making a lot of decisions, what would you do? What would you instill, or one principle that you would instill into developing AI that is useful for everybody?
Oh man, give me a silver one and like, but
I
really,
mean, you
like
had all the money in the world behind you.
I would I would just make sure that the benefits of AI are distributed as evenly and as beneficially as possible. That to me is the key thing, right? It is the ultimate dual use technology. So anything we can do, I kind of trust humanity to make the right decisions in the end, if given at the individual level, if you give them the right resources. But I just don't trust as a capitalistic society to do the right things.
Yeah.
So it's really about making sure that everyone
Mm,
benefits and not just some people benefit from this change that's going to come through society.
mm,
That's what I would do. I would be looking at things like a universal basic income to end poverty. It's just our social structures don't allow it. And
yeah.
so that's what I would do. I would try to, and I mean, this maybe I'm a bit inspired by Muslim history, and it's always easy to romanticize it, but
Mm,
there have been times in Muslim history when there was no poverty. It may not have lasted super long time, might have
Yeah.
lasted, 50 years or something. But that just is, where the society is stable. And I really just have this, maybe I'm a techno-optimist, but I have this hope that AI can be this vehicle there. A lot of things would have to change for that to happen, but it definitely has that potential for us to kind of eliminate a lot of the oppression, a lot of the um, distribution issues, inequality that exists. And the question is just how do we direct it towards that direction instead of making, Jensen Huang and Sam Altman richer, which it seems
Yeah,
so that's what's going to happen now.
exactly. So, Waleed, where can we access your Ansari? Is it an app? What is it?
Yeah, so Ansari is available at ansari.chat. It's
Hmm.
also available in the iOS and Android Play stores as just search for Ansari Chat.
Hmm.
And I will send you its WhatsApp phone number. So now you can even talk to it and send it chat
Oh.
messages.
So I want to thank you, Waleed Kadous, for joining us today. And for the listeners who are listening, the future isn't waiting, and neither are we. We got to do what we have to do. So thank you all so much for joining me. And until next time, I'm your host, Daisy Khan.
Thank you so much, Daisy. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining me on Wise Women. If something stirred in you today, don't let it stop here. Share this episode with someone who needs it. Reflect on what resonated for you. And definitely plant one seed of change, however small. Remember, you do matter. And your actions have a ripple effect. But none of us can rise alone. To explore more resources and ways to get involved, do visit my website, daisycon.com. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, because every click is your way of amplifying this message to others. Wisdom isn't just heard, my friends, it's lived. So let's live it. Until next time, stay wise and stay rooted.